Welcome back to the Budget Gamer channel, where we bring you critical and in-depth indie game reviews on just about every one of them we can get our hands on. And today we're going to be taking a look at Bard's Gold, which even though it was released way back in 2015 for Steam as well as a handful of other consoles, it just now made its way to the Switch. So if you were looking for another hardcore platformer with a bit of a classic flair, you may want to stay tuned for this review. Bard's Gold, even though it's not directly expressed within the game, does have a bit of a backstory, and that is that generations ago an evil goblin was sealed away, and it's been kind of the Bard's family's duty to make sure that that evil doesn't really return to the world. And though it's not really explicitly explained how gold has anything to do with keeping or breaking the seal, in the beginning of the game footage we do see a little goblin pop up and steal the Bard's Gold jumping down a well. And it's chasing this goblin down the well and attempting to get the Bard's Gold back that welcomes us into the actual gameplay world. However, before you can start on your adventure, there are 3 different modes of gameplay to choose between that are meant more to cater to different types or maybe different skill levels of players. The normal mode gives you the most amount of health and the least amount of gold, but also does reward you with very liberal checkpoints. Classic mode strips away some of the health, adds gold, and still maintains the checkpoints. And the final Die Hard mode takes away extra lives in exchange for a couple of hit points, and removes the checkpoint system altogether. And while this final difficulty level will have you playing through the entirety of the game from start to finish pretty much in one go without dying, the normal and classic modes introduce you to a different level selection screen. Starting off dungeon diving with level 1 of World 1, you'll be introduced to a world that really has no hand-holding and no explicit rules. You find out that you can jump and throw a dagger, and if you're really intuitive, you'll figure out that you can double jump from the beginning of the game. But other than that, you kinda have to figure out what to do on your own. And though the obvious objective is to be able to make it past the first level into the second level and so on and so forth, what you choose to do between point A and point B is completely up to you as the player. And it's here that the developer of Bard's Gold chose to focus on classic gaming, but not in a way that limits you to what classic games were capable of doing, but more focused on the days when games would probably have required huge manuals and it was up to the player to figure out exactly how to play the game. You can, of course, just quickly grab the key and open the next door and move on to the next level, and that is a totally legitimate way to play the game. Or you could try to kill every single monster in every level and see if maybe that does something. Or you could grab that pair of magic glasses that is offered to you in the first room of level 1 and see if there's more than meets the eye to any of the individual levels, or if maybe collecting all the secrets has its own reward. But regardless of how you choose to tackle each level, every single level in the game is subjected to a pretty short little timer. And should you accidentally let that little timer run out before you manage to exit the level, the difficulty will increase exponentially due to the addition of Hellfire and Brimstone. And while the general gameplay does consist of try not to get killed and try to make it to the end of the level before the timer runs out, the addition of shops dotted throughout each world or each level is also an avenue that the developer chose to use in order to spice up the gameplay just a little bit. Though you can easily see that there are kind of 3 different types of items, or at least different item sets that you can buy in the shop. What they do exactly isn't quite explained. Weapons are of course weapons, and health is always going to be health, but depending on your particular playstyle, it might be a huge advantage to buy each level some additional time, but other than that, you'll really have to figure out what each of these items is intended to do as you play through the game and experiment. As stated earlier, Bard's Gold is divided up into 4 different worlds with pretty extremely different themes and different bosses for each. However, considering the one-hit kill mechanic within the game, regardless of how many lives or hit points you have in any different game modes you've chosen to play through, it will take a fair bit of skill, practice, and patience to be able to make it through the first 6 levels of each world in order to get to that 7th level and fight that boss. And though you are definitely destined to see that game over screen time and time again if you do choose to play through Bard's Gold, the first game over screen you see might be a bit of a surprise. As you play through Bard's Gold, there are going to be secrets and secret areas that are up to you to find, and some of which include magical skill books that are also dropped by every boss you face. And it's at the game over screen with any amount of gems that you've managed not to spend at the shops that you'll be able to power up these abilities gained from these skill books gained within gameplay to be able to use on your next pass. And whether these skills apply to finding more gems at a time, increasing your max life, your weapon range, or even your fire rate, it really is going to depend on your playstyle, which ones you choose to improve on, and how much you think they'll actually affect your ability to make it to the end of the game. Overall though, I'd have to say, summing up Bard's Gold, it's definitely a very simple and innovative platformer, and the additional modes of gameplay, along with that just general sense of exploration to be able to play the game kind of the way you want to, does make for a really novel and unique experience. However, that being said, there are a couple of flaws that one might want to note before diving into the game, and those are pretty much that as a platformer, yes, it is a simple platformer. And being hit by spikes or trigger plates that launch arrows that you really can't avoid unless you've already memorized where they're going to be, does sometimes feel kind of cheap. cheap. And regarding its roguelike or roguelite nature as a platformer, certain players may not really feel inspired when having to complete the previous 6 levels just to get back to the boss. Though the incentive is definitely the special items and secrets and gems that you can get to eventually power up your character even further, playing through the same sequence of levels and enemies time and time again can feel a bit laborious. But in total summary, Bard's Gold is actually a pretty fun game, and it's definitely a unique experience if you didn't grow up in that era of games that existed before in-game tutorials. So if you're into kind of brutal punishing platformers, and definitely if you're into the games with a one-touch kill mechanic or roguelites in general, you're probably going to get a fair amount of enjoyment out of Bard's Gold. However, if you are just into casual platformers, the difficulty level and learning curve might be a little steep. But that does about wrap up the review of Bard's Gold now on the Switch. So if you enjoyed the review or found it helpful, feel free to throw me a comment or a like, show your support, and don't forget to click that little bell icon when you subscribe to stay updated with the latest content. There are new and unique indies coming out literally every single day, so there's always going to be something new to find right here. But if you do want a hint at what reviews might be coming out next, you can follow us on Twitter. But this has been Budget Gamers. As always, thanks for watching.